We're going to be talking more about this because you were talking about the crypto and the
central bank digital currency.
Central bank and the IMF SDRs and all this stuff. They're playing games with money big time right now.
Well, they're trying to control it. It reminds me of the quote that we were discussing actually the other day from Kissinger. Remember?
What was that?
Who was the main influence on Klaus Schwab, who runs the World Economic Forum in Davos.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we could tell that story when we get back from break if you want me to. But what his quote was, if you control the food, you control the money. Or excuse me, if you control the food, you control the people. If you control the energy, you control countries. And if you control money, you control the world.
That's right. And that was what Rothschild said. I care not who makes the rules.
Right.
As long as I control the money.
Yeah. And I think that's part of their objective. And we hear them out just explicitly talking about it at Davos this week.
All right, Shalom. This is the brother Nahalia from the GMS Orlando camp. I want to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, B'kah Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are the elders of Yashar Allah. And a sincere salutation to all you Akim, who are preaching this word and believing this word, and to the Akwath who are believing this word, in all truth and in sincerity. Yahweh is the name of the one they ignorantly call God. Yahweh Shai is the name of the one they ignorantly call Jesus. Bahashem is in the name. Rakah is spirit. Kodash is holy. Akyam is brothers, and Akwath is sisters. And Shalom means peace. All right, this is Revelation chapter 13 and verse 15. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. Now we know this is parabolic, all right? Parables are used, dark sayings are used, all right, to describe certain situations that play out on the earth. Now when you deal with the beast in essence is the system that we know today. All right, whether you want to call it democracy, capitalism, all right, whatever you want to call it, the system that we currently live in is the image of the beast. All right. And the scripture describes the worshiping of that image. All right. And this is why we see a shift in things going digital. I'll just say it that way. All right. Because a lot of our videos are getting censored because of certain words that we use. So I'll keep it as coded as possible. Verse 16 reads, and he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. So we understand that everything is boiling down to a mark. All right. And if you can receive it, that mark, all right, is the RFID implant. OK, now, eventually, these things are going to transition into that style of system. What you saw was a clip from Rich Dad, the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and George Gammon. All right. These two individuals are very knowledgeable in economics and money in general. All right. And those statements were very telltale. All right. One of them paraphrased the quote from Rothschild. All right. Meyer Amschel Rothschild. All right. And the quote says, "Permit me to issue and control the money of a nation, and I care not who makes its laws." Because one of the things that you're going to see in that clip, or you saw in that clip, is that there's a push to control the money. All right, there's a push to control the system and the way transactions are handled moving forward. Now we're in a recession, as they say, and there is high inflation. All right, gas prices where they are is going to force everything to go up, including food prices. Now, why is all of this being done? All right, this is not a coincidence. This did not happen by accident. All right, one of the statements mentioned by George Gammon was, if you can control the food, you can control the people. If you can control the energy, you can control the countries. And if you can control the money, you control the world. This is why you see a push on all sides to put people in a pressured position. Now, the reason being is because eventually this is going to transition into a mandate for people to transition into a new form of payment. All right, a new system of payment. All right, this is why you see the central banks starting to deal with digital currencies. You see different nations beginning to deal with different currencies. And these are things that brothers, beginning with our apostles on down, have been speaking on for decades. All right. For some of us, it's been a few years. For brothers, for the apostles, it's been decades. And now you see some of the main faces dealing with economics, with money in general, speaking on the same things that we understand go back to prophecy. All right. And one important statement that I want to reiterate is George Gammon's statement about controlling the food, you control the people. Control the energy, you control countries. And if you control the money, you control the world. There is a consolidation happening. Eventually, in order for a world organization or a world government to play out, all right, democracy as you know it has to come to an end. And we see this happening slowly but surely. All right. One of the perfect examples of that was C-19 and their ability to tell people when they can and can't come out their house. Mandates on what you can wear in your face. All right. Dealing with masks. All right. Mandating that people take an experimental jab to keep their job. Now, these don't go along with the Constitution as most Americans understand it. And this is one of those examples that shows you that the liberties that people enjoy are going to be taken away. All right, George Gammon. Let's look up George Gammon, because I want you to be aware of who is saying these things. All right, George Gammon. All right, is an American real estate investor and entrepreneur. All right, and he's very big on money, on capitalism. All right, and you all know the author, or you should know the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. All right, and if you don't, you should look it up. Robert Kiyosaki. All right, dealing with economies, dealing with money. These are individuals who are competent, more than competent in the field of economics, and they understand what's happening on the earth. All right, there is a consolidation. And I want to bring out two articles because, again, this all goes back to the implementation of a new way of payment, a new system of money. All right, the old system, the system that we currently live in, all right, is outdated. And there's been many nations pushing for a new system. And this is what the scriptures talk about. When the scriptures talk about the mark on the right hand or forehead, you know, Christianity will tell you it's a mark that people burn into your hand or your forehead, and the devil's going to be sitting on the throne, and this one antichrist is going to be ruling the entire planet, and he's going to force people to get this brand. No. When you look at what's happening on the earth right now, whether it's Bitcoin, all right, whether it's Ethereum, all of these are digital currencies. But the only way you can use these digital currencies is through cell phones or laptops. Now, the argument is that if I take your cell phone, I can essentially use all the money that you have if this digital system transitions to that form of payment. So they're going to offer a safer solution. All right, and that safer solution is going to be implanted. That way your identity can't be stolen, your cell phone can't be stolen, and your money along with it. Now, this article that I have here is from April 15th of this year. All right, and it's WFLA Tampa, MSN.com. And it says, no wallet needed. Tech company implants microchip to let you pay with your hand. Now, these things seem far-fetched to our people when our apostles and elders brought this out decades ago, 30 plus years ago. But now these things are being talked about by some of the prominent faces in economics, technology, world organizations, Klaus Schwab, to name one, dealing with the World Economic Forum in Davos. When you look at Davos 2022, for those who went through some of the seminars, some of the conversations that they were having, some of them were hours long. I didn't get to all of them, but I did catch a few of them. And the foundation of the conversation was around global cooperation, having the ability to proclaim what a pandemic is, and having the rules be set by an organization above governments, and a way to track people. Now, some instances they said it was for carbon, to see how much carbon people are putting out into the atmosphere. And on another hand, it was for currency. All right, because eventually this is going to play out. And this is what we have known to be true through the Spirit. But as we get closer to the end, it becomes more and more obvious. All right, now I want to read a little bit of this article. It says, Tampa FLA, would you get a chip implanted in your hand or arm to pay for things instead of using a credit card or cash? For some, the answer is yes. A British-Polish tech startup, Walletmore, is giving customers the chance to leave their wallets at home through a microchip RFID payment device inserted under the skin. Now, we understand that eventually this option is going to be the main option, the only option. Because when you deal with cryptocurrencies, when you deal with digital currencies, and the central banks are working on their own form of digital currency, those form of currencies at this moment in time don't have a vehicle, meaning they don't have a system where they can be used and accessed all across the planet. Eventually, they're going to have ATMs where you can pull out your cryptocurrency through an ATM system. But eventually, it's going to transition. All right. And no, I want to bring out another article that shows this. OK. This article here says MasterCard launches tech that lets you pay with your face or hand in stores. So this is an example of a huge company as far as payments. MasterCard is a huge company dealing with payments, and they're experimenting with biometrics. All right, biometrics is different because that's dealing with your facial recognition, fingerprints, things of that nature. Now, in order for this to work, your information is going to have to be logged into a database, your fingerprints, your facial scan, whatever the case may be. But when you combine it with the tech of the RFID, what you're going to have is a system where if you don't accept it, your life is going to be extremely difficult, as intended. Because behind all of these conveniences, there's a push for control. All right, when you deal with the conversation that Robert Kiyosaki and George Gammon were having, and I'll put the link to the full YouTube conversation in the description, they understand that there's a difference in that there is a push to control the money of the world. Now, these are two rich men, but there's a big difference between money and power. And this is something that our people are not often privy to, that there's a huge difference between having money and actually having influence and power. What Robert Kiyosaki and George Gammon realize is that having money doesn't necessarily mean they have power, because they're witnessing power being played out. When you deal with high inflation rates, all right, and you know what? Let me go here. Let me just grab this really quick. This is Ecclesiastes chapter 10 and verse 8. Because of unrighteous dealings, injuries, and riches got by deceit, the kingdom is translated from one people to another. So ultimately, the Lord's going to take the world, beginning with the elect under Yahweh Shai, out of this system and implement a new kingdom, a new government on the earth. But we see the beginning stages of a transition of wealth. And Robert Kiyosaki and George Gammon, they also see the same thing. That we're moving into a place where it's no longer about being a so-called white man. That at this point, it's about the rich so-called white men who have power to change laws, to implement new laws. And Robert Kiyosaki and George Gammon are examples of men who may have money, but they don't have power. They can only witness this from the sidelines, because what's happening is the elites of Edom are taking the wealth from their own people. That's the transition. And eventually it's going to boil down to this new method, this new payment method, this new payment system, which is going to be presented to the people as convenience. But under it is malicious intent. And that intent is to control. All right, this is 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 3. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. Remember ye not that when I was yet with you, I told you these things. All right, and what you have is the elites of Edom. Their push to control the world is going to be through technology. All right, when you deal with big tech, one of the biggest, one of the fastest growing assets, I'll say it that way, is big data. And what big data is, when you go on Google and you search things, or when you go on Amazon and you buy certain things, your history is being sold to advertisement companies. And this is how they can predict what items you may or may not like. All of that information is eventually going to boil down to a database, a central place where your profile, who you are, what you do, where you go, will be tracked. What your tendencies are, what your routine is. Even now with Google Maps, Waze, your history, your traveling, even when you're not using the app still has the ability to track your location. And contrary to popular belief, you know, our people especially are completely in the dark concerning these things, but the ones who control what you eat, what you drink, what you see on TV, where you can and can't go, they have a different agenda. And you can see that play out on places like the World Economic Forum and the conversations that they're having about the next 20 to 30 years. And it's a push for control. When you see what's going on with the food prices and Gates of Hell and his ability to buy up most of the farmland in the US of A, and his agenda to use genetically modified crops, weather-resistant seeds, and things that are not natural, that's an attack on the food. The fact that he owns most of the farmland in the US of A is a sign that there's a push for control of the food. And remember what George Gammon said: you control the food, you control the people. All right, when you deal with energy, the cost of oil has gone up dramatically, and that's not just in the US of A, that's global. Which means the average things that people pay for, they're going to naturally go up because the people who own these companies have to cover the cost of travel. Not only that, the high price in oil and gas is causing the farmers not to be able to produce or plant or provide for the cows that they have on this land, which means that in the coming months, prices of food are going to increase again dramatically. And there's a reason for all of this, all right? When you deal with 2 Thessalonians, the 2nd chapter, all right, it talks about the one who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God. See, when you control resources, you can control people. All right, and that is the intent. That is the intention. It's not about money. It's about control. And this is something that we're not taught in this system. The difference between money and control, money and power. The people you see on TV are considered rich. Some of them may even be considered wealthy. But there are people you do not see. That only people who actually study and chase the money find out who's who. And there are a very limited amount of people at the top of the food chain who have an intention to control even more of your life. And this is why we know Revelation chapter 13 and 16 is playing out before our eyes. Because this isn't an embargo act. You don't hear news about an embargo act. You don't hear news about the government saying they want to give you a tattoo on your right hand or your forehead. But what you do see is article after article talking about digital currencies and how having an implant would prevent you from walking around with a wallet or a purse if you decide not to. Even in the medical industry, when you deal with the medical industry talking about the ability for a implant to be able to track your metrics as far as your blood pressure, your body temperature. All of these roads lead to this place where it's going to seem naturally convenient. And this is why the scriptures say this. All right, bear with me. This is 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 and verse 3. For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. Because this squeeze, what's happening with the oil prices, what's happening with gas, what's happening with inflation, is going to affect poor and middle class people first. First quarter, it's going to affect the poor and the middle class who are at this point living check to check. Then it'll trickle down to the so-called rich of this world who are not juiced in, who don't have power or influence. Because if your money loses value, it doesn't matter how much of it you have. Eventually, you'll be in the same position. And this is ultimately a consolidation. Because again, when you deal with banks can only last in those conditions but so long. And there's a consolidation from everyday mom and pop banks to the bigger banks to the central banks. And this is an all-around push. Again, remember what George Gammon said. Control the food, you control the people. Control the energy, you control the countries. And you control the money, you control the world. Now, the scriptures say that wisdom is too high for a fool. And most of our people don't think about rulership and the people who are actually ruling the world. Because life is hard in itself. And just surviving it takes up most of your time. But these things are playing out whether our people are ready for it or not. And ultimately, 2/3 of our people are not ready for this. And ultimately, this is coming down to judge 2/3 of our people who looked at the knowledge of the Lord as folly. This is Proverbs chapter 24 and verse 7. Wisdom is too high for a fool. He openeth not his mouth in the gate. And the wisdom is that the Lord gave us the understanding of what would happen in our time before it actually happened. Now, 2/3 of our people will not receive it according to prophecy. Yet those who do understand this through the Spirit, this is another update on what's going on around us. And that eventually, when guys like Robert Kiyosaki and George Gammon are speaking about things that go back to the scriptures without talking about the scriptures, it shows you what type of time we're in right now. Most of our people don't think it's actually going to play out this way. Yet, all right, the scriptures say in the end it shall speak and not lie. As a matter of fact, this is Habakkuk 1 and 5. Behold ye among the heathen, and regard and wonder marvelously. For I will work a work in your days, which ye will not believe, though it be told you. And the reason most of our people don't believe it is because someone with a suit and tie isn't telling them this. Or they grew up with the person who's telling them this. Where's your degree at? Where's your PhD? So they see brothers speak on these things, and it's only until someone with a suit and tie says it that they actually believe it. But it starts with the Lord. And that's why we can pull up clips like this of Robert Kiyosaki and George Gammon and show that it goes back to the scriptures that were written thousands of years before these guys were even born. And we know through the Spirit what it leads to. See, they need this pressure. They need to put people under pressure. And a lot of people are going to lose their life. That's the reality of what's going to happen. Because when the food prices go up, people are going to get more desperate. We're already at a increase in crime nationally. All right. I don't know the global statistics, but nationally, there's an increase in crime. And that's because everything, all of the printing of money, the PPP loans and the stimulus packages, now you're beginning to pay for it. And you're paying for it at the pump and you're paying for it at the grocery store. But it doesn't stop here. And we know that through the Spirit and power of Yahweh Shema Shah that these things are going to get worse. But for those who believe through the Spirit, it's not about how the Lord does it. It's about the fact that the Lord will do it. If you believe and if you're following through the Spirit and power of Yahweh Shema Shah to the best of your ability, don't worry about how the Lord is going to deliver you. Just have faith that he will. All right, now I want to go back to this article. All right, it says MasterCard launches tech that lets you pay with your face or hand in stores. And most people see articles like this and they don't really take into account that your information is going to be logged into a system like MasterCard. These big companies who have data breaches all the time. You got Credit Karma, you always get those notifications about these breaches of these companies. And they're going to use that as a way to say, look, we need to just implant it. Your identification, your blood pressure, your medical records. We need to just put it in you. And this is why they're experimenting with face and hand. But eventually it's going to transition. They're going to need something more powerful. And you have different tech companies that are trying to get ahead of the curve for when this thing really transitions. All right, now when you look at this article, all right, it says this. MasterCard is piloting new technology that lets shoppers make payments with just their face or hand at the checkout point. The company on Tuesday launched a program for retailers to offer biometric payment methods like facial recognition and fingerprint scanning at checkout. Users will be able to authenticate their payment by showing their face or the palm of their hand instead of swiping their card. The program has already gone live in 5 St. March grocery stores in Sao Paulo, Brazil. MasterCard says it plans to roll it out globally later this year. All the research that we've done has told us that consumers love biometrics. All right, and this is a form of gradualism. All right, it started out with the debit card. Then it started out with the debit card with the chip in it. You went from swiping to tapping. Then you went from that to Apple Pay and Google Pay. And eventually there's a transition to something else, even with the inclusion of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. Right now, it all stops at the cell phone. And the argument is going to be, well, someone can take your cell phone. All right, someone can use your cell phone and they can hack your data. And eventually this system is going to transition into face, palm, and then eventually biotechnology. All right, because as they say, Ajay Bala, MasterCard's president of cyber and intelligence, all the research that we've done has told us that consumers love biometrics because of the convenience. All right, it says they want making a payment at a store to be as convenient as opening their phone. About 1.4 billion people are expected to use facial recognition technology to authenticate a payment by 2025, more than doubling from 671 million in 2020, according to a forecast from Juniper Research. Now, I want to jump down to this point here because it says it's similar to tech that's being trialed by Amazon in the US, because Amazon is also a part of this transition to a more convenient form of payment. And our job through the Spirit is to show that these things go back to prophecy ultimately. Right now, it's just going to be presented as a form of convenience, but eventually it's going to transition into something that's going to be mandated. When you deal with China, all right, at this point in time, China has a social credit system where if you're deemed socially, how should I say this? If you're deemed socially unsatisfactory, there are certain places you can't go. Most people in China pay using an app called, I believe it's WeChat, but they use some form of digital payment using their cell phone. The social credit system allows the Chinese government to prevent people from paying for tickets to different places, including different countries, if their social credit score isn't at a certain level. Now, they're the first ones to implement this type of system. They also have facial recognition in their system. And this is just one place of the earth, but it's quickly transitioning to other places. When you deal with India, India went cashless years ago, and now they have a digital form of payment. And eventually, all of these global systems are going to consolidate and move towards a digital form of payment. All right, this says Amazon is bringing palm scanning payment system to Whole Foods stores. And this was from last year, all right, April 21st, 2021. It says Amazon is bringing its palm scanning payment system to a Whole Foods store in Seattle, the company announced Wednesday, with rollout planned for other locations. Previously, the technology was available only at a dozen of Amazon's physical stores. Amazon said it has signed up thousands of users of the system. So you see these huge companies exploring more convenient ways of payment. And this is how we know when the Lord gave us prophecy in Revelation, the 13th chapter, and it talks about no man being able to buy or sell, save he that had the mark. Things begin to become more clear as we get to the end of this, that there is a push to consolidate all of these different identification systems into one main system. You know, the elder in Dallas brought up a beautiful point about super apps. North Korea is using it. China's using it. These are apps that you can, for example, an app that would have Google Maps, Apple Pay, your music, restaurant reservations, all of these things. When you deal with China and I believe North or South Korea, they have what is known as super apps. And these apps give you the ability to do a number of different things under one application. So you don't have to download Google Maps. You can download one app, and that one app has all of these features. And that's another example of consolidation. Everything is moving towards a centralized place. Even when you deal with World Health Organization, the World Trade Organization, there's a push for more global cooperation. And this is what the Lord spoke of when he said, verse 15, and he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. Now, when you go into that word killed, all right, and I bring this out a lot through the Spirit. When you go into that Greek word for killed, it is apokteno, all right, apokteno, matter of fact.
Strong's G 615, apoktino. apartaino.
All right, and it says to kill in any way, whatever. Now, when you go into the root word, it says of separation. So anyone who doesn't worship the beast will be separated from the system. How do they have the ability to do that? By consolidating these systems under a system where everybody's tracked. The idea of freedom of speech, the idea of the system as it is, as it stands today, is going to come to an end. And it's going to get worse. You have a lot of our people who are sticking their head in the sand and refusing to acknowledge that things are going to get hard out here. But the reality is it doesn't change what's coming. And this shows you that there is a push. This isn't an accident. Ultimately, it's prophecy, but the Lord said that the son of perdition would be revealed. When you deal with the word perdition, perdition means destruction. And then in the next verse, it tells you that he opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God. And we're seeing that play out through digital means, through the digitization of the world, whether it's social media, whether it's the metaverse, whether it's Web3. All of these things is the world going into a digital space where it's going to be painted as convenient and natural, when really it's just a push for control. If I can just turn your ability to pay for things off like they do in China, when anyone speaks up against the government in China, they can just turn off their app and they can't go anywhere. They can't buy certain things. That's one example of what will play out globally. And as it sounds far-fetched to most people, the news articles are speaking for themselves. The people who actually have the power to do this are speaking for themselves. When you look up Yuval Harari, the advisor to Klaus Schwab, he's speaking very candidly about technology taking over, all right, about implanting, hacking humans. And this is why ultimately we're going to reach that hour of temptation that the Lord spoke of in Revelation, the 3rd chapter. And I'll get it really quick. This is Revelation chapter 3 and verse 11. Because thou hast kept the word of my patience, I also will keep thee from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon all the world, to try them that dwell upon the earth. And what is that hour of temptation? That is, do you want to follow the multitude to be accepted and to not be outcasted? Do you want to follow the multitude because they're in control of the food and where you can and can't stay? Because when this system plays out, that's the choice that's going to be made. And the Lord is saying he's going to keep his chosen from that hour of temptation. It doesn't mean they're going to be delivered. They're going to be in the midst of it, but the Lord is going to protect them. Lord willing, we be a part of that number. But what we see is chess, not checkers. All right, this is a very gradual push for control. And what you're noticing is that Edomites, the average so-called white man, are starting to understand that they're losing whatever influence they've had for some time. And now it's no longer about them being an Edomite. Now they're getting lumped in with everybody else. And I did a video on that, how that's going to result into sedition. Along with these gas prices and inflation, things are going to get bad because a lot of people are going to have to suffer in order for this system to collapse enough for this agenda to be pushed and accepted. All right, so Lord willing, I wasn't too long-winded, but I wanted to kind of go into it in a way where it can be as understood as possible, Lord willing. And if I do need to go over it again through the Spirit, I will. Just let me know. But with that, continue to stay strong through the Spirit. Don't worry about tomorrow. Do the best that you can through the Spirit and power of Yahweh Shema Shah today. Use wisdom. If you can afford to, get you a 20-pound bag of rice and beans. something like, we're not dependent on it, but it would be in your best interest, because again, things are going to get bad. All right, and the Lord has commanded us to warn our people of these things, but at the same time to let our people know, the ones who have returned to the Lord, that this is the judgment of the wicked. And the Lord is using the elites of this world to bring this about, to judge his own people. All right, so Lord willing, this was edifying. With that, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rokakodash. Matter of fact, I'm going to finish this. Revelation 3:10. Because thou hast kept the word of my patience, I also will keep thee from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon all the world, to try them that dwell upon the earth. Behold, I come quickly. Hold that fast which thou hast, that no man take thy crown. And with that, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rokakodash. Shalom.